Hey there, friends. How's it going? Welcome back to another movie review. This one is going to continue the Pirates of the Caribbean franchise. This is the fourth entry on Stranger Tides. I love this franchise. I've always have. And honestly, this used to be my favorite. It's now my second favorite, but I think it's a really strong film. The reception is not great to this one. People hate it. They think it's trash. I mean, that's fair. It is it's technically a sequel. It's picking up after the trilogy, but it works more as a spin-off with Jack as the lead. This is 2 hours 21 minutes, and this came out in 2011. And this was filmed using 3D cameras, which is interesting. We'll get to that. And this is PG-13, and this is a fantastic movie, in my opinion. I've always loved it. I think the best thing to say about this movie is it has the best atmosphere, I think, the best feel of all the films to me. And yeah, we have a great cast as well. This is directed by Rob Marshall, so this is the first in the series to not be directed by Gore Verbinski, who did the Pirates trilogy. Um, so it does have a little bit of a different feel. Um, but yeah, do have, of course, our friend Johnny Depp as Captain Jack Sparrow joining once again. And he's the main focus here. He's the main character, and we're following his adventure. He's essentially, well, actually, we'll get to the story later. We do have Kevin McNally back as Mr. Gibbs, Jack's first mate. And Jeffrey Rush is back as Barbossa once again. He's now a privateer in the Navy. And we have a few newcomers, actually a lot of newcomers. Ian McShane is the villainous Blackbeard. Really awesome to have him in the series. Based, of course, on the real pirate. Penelope Cruz as Angelica, one of Jack's old flames and Blackbeard's daughter. Not a spoiler. It's been out for quite a bit. One of the best parts, honestly, is Richard Griffiths as King George II. He only has one scene in the beginning of the film when Jack gets imprisoned, but it's such a good scene, and that also reintroduces Barbossa too. So that whole scene is fantastic. Unfortunately, that's the only scene he's in, but he's great as King George. We have more newcomers. Sam Claflin is Philip Swift, a missionary aboard Blackbeard's crew. And we have Astrid Burgess Frisbee as Serena, one of the mermaids that they capture. And there's a lot of newcomers. Unfortunately, they don't get a lot of focus aside from Angelica and Blackbeard. Everyone else is kind of just like there. It's kind of one of the weaker points of the script. A lot of the characters are just like along for the ride, which is fine, but you kind of want to see some development. But essentially, this is probably the simplest Pirates plot. A lot of the plots are kind of like starting from Dead Man's Chest, they all get kind of like silly and ridiculous and like over complicated. But this one has the simplest story, like the simple plot. Essentially, Jack and Gibbs are trying to get a ship and just trying to sail the seas, and essentially they get roped into this quest to go to the Fountain of Youth. So Mr. Gibbs is trying to help out Jack, and he gets captured, and he ends up going with Barbossa along to the fountain, and then Jack he ends up getting on board the Queen Anne's Revenge, which is Blackbeard's ship, and he's just kind of roped into this quest, to go to the Fountain of Youth, and he finds out there's like this, prophecy with a one-legged man with, Blackbeard's death. That's kind of one of the prophecy things, and then there's a ritual with the fountain where you have to have two chalices that are silver, one with the mermaid tear, one without. So it's kind of cool. I think this movie works on multiple rewatches because then you get the story easier. It's a little bit complicated. It's a little bit confusing the first time you watch it because the plot rushes very fast. It's a little hard to keep track of at times, which is one of the weaker points for this one. But the best part is the story is really simple. Everyone is just trying to get to the fountain. Jack, Blackbeard, Barbosa, and also the Spanish and the English, led by King George. Well, essentially, King George has hired Barbosa as a privateer, and he's taking on the Royal Navy, and they're all trying to get to the Fountain of Youth, and it does end up happening. And I think one of the best scenes is the end of the film where everyone's at the fountain, and there's this big old huge battle, and it's just awesome. And it's a practical set, so they actually built the Fountain of Youth in a massive cave with water and rocks. It's just great. um yeah, like there's a lot of great action too. We get a lot of cool scenes aboard the Queen Anne's Revenge. We get the London, chase at the beginning. There's the epic mermaid section, the whole White Cat Bay battle with all the mermaids. That's fantastic. There's a lot of great sword fighting as well. Anytime Jack and Barbosa are together is great. I think this plot would have been better if Jack and Barbosa had teamed up, like at the beginning, and just went against Blackbeard, because he's also trying to get to the fountain. Because near the end, they both reunite, and it's great, but I think the film would have worked a lot better if him and Barbosa had been, like, just partnered up the whole time. Whereas in the movie, they're just partnered for a little bit, which is a little bit of a shame, but seriously, Jeffrey and Johnny's chemistry is fantastic. Like, you can tell they love playing these characters, and Barbosa and Jack are just so interesting, especially when they're together. It's it's just entertaining. I don't know, it's just so fun. Um, yeah, lots of great special effects as well. I mentioned this was filmed with 3D cameras. It has this interesting, like, surreal vibe. Like, it just looks amazing. Like the way they shot it. A lot of the shots are really cool because we're on the water for a lot of this, and a lot of like practical sets and explosions and fighting and just great action. And it has some of the best moments again with the mermaid scene. It's just so cool. We finally get introduced to all these mermaids who aren't nice. These are evil chicks. They are powerful. They take down a whole pirate ship in like 5 seconds, which is kind of insane. I like all the different stuff with the Spanish. The Spaniard's a great character. He gets a great scene at the fountain, and it's just really cool. A lot of lore is built up. We get to see a lot more of the Caribbean. And yeah, that's cool. Tortuga's back. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention the sword fight between Jack and Angelica. She gets introduced as Captain Jack Sparrow, like an imposter, and they fight in a bar, and it's just really cool. And yeah, that's a great standout. Blackbeard is awesome. I will say, I feel like he's not as evil as you would think. He's more mean and angry. I feel like they could have made him a lot more villainous. He's a great villain, but I think compared to especially Barbosa in the first movie, who is just amazing, he's I don't know. I feel like he's a little bit weaker, and especially Davy Jones, you can't really beat him. So they tried. Blackbeard is a great character, but I think Ian McShane should have done a little bit of a more. He should have put more menace into the performance, is what I mean. He should have been a lot more evil. But he looks great, sounds great, has great costume, cool sword too. The Sword of Triton, I think it's called that once, which is very interesting. That sword can control the Queen Anne's Revenge's ropes, it's very cool. It's like very magic. There's a lot of magic in these movies, but I think it's great. The costuming is fantastic. Every costume is amazing. Like throughout the whole franchise, the costumes are just beautiful. But in this film, I think that there's a great look to all the characters' outfits. And yeah, I always watch these movies for the action. The action is fantastic. I think the best action scene is probably the fountain climax, where everyone's just fighting and it's chaos. It's just great. It doesn't disappoint. Um, and yeah, I'm trying to think of some cons. Um, the script is a little rushed at times. Like a lot of the scenes, it's kind of in the middle half of the film. It's a little bland because we're all trying to get to the fountain. Essentially, it's just there's some action scenes, and then we're all riding towards the fountain, and it's a little boring in the middle half, but it does pick up after that for sure. Um, think of some other things I don't like. Not much. I really love this movie, especially the vibe. It's very adventurous. You know, it feels like the other films, even though it does have a different look and director. I think Rob Marshall did a great job. Obviously, it's going after it's coming after At World's End, which was the third film. Which that movie is insane. The plot, it's just a mess, but it's a fun movie. It's a great finale to the trilogy. But at the end of that movie, Blackbeard, or I'm sorry, Barbossa and Jack are both trying to get to the Fountain of Youth with the map, and this movie is kind of a spin-off of that. And the next movie, Dead Men Tell No Tales, which I have reviewed previously, that movie is also kind of a sequel to this movie, but it's also kind of a spin-off. These are more spin-offs of the main trilogy, even though they are sequels. It's kind of hard to explain. Sequel spin-offs. That's the way I could describe these. As for the runtime, they are a bit long. However, it's so like fast-paced. There's a lot to it, and there's a lot of great comedy sprinkled, and the action carries it for sure, and the performances are great. Um, and the way they shot this one is really beautiful to me. Like the shots of the water, the different ships. Unfortunately, I do think one of the weakest parts of this movie is that there's not a lot of ship action. In fact, there's really none because most of the ships are not in this film. The only real ship we get is the Queen Anne's Revenge, which of course is Blackbeard's flagship. We don't get the Black Pearl. Well, we get to see the Black Pearl, but we don't see it in action. We see it's trapped in a bottle because part of Barbossa's story is Blackbeard, or sorry, Blackbeard took the Black Pearl from Barbossa, and so he's trying to get that back. That's the only reason he joins the quest is for revenge against Blackbeard. And spoiler, Blackbeard dies of a very gruesome death for a Disney movie. It's very disturbing, very disturbing. Especially, this is a Disney movie. Quote. It's edgy in some places. But yeah, Barbossa's on the. He just wants revenge against Blackbeard to kill him, and the prophecy. Part of the prophecy is that Blackbeard will be killed by a one-legged man, and Barbossa is that man, so he ends up killing him in the end. And so, yeah, the Black Pearl gets a little bit of a cameo. It's not really in the film. It's just kind of there in a bottle, and it's cool. I do think one of the cool concepts is Blackbeard has been around killing and, murdering for so long. But he's got several ships in bottles in the Queen Anne's Revenge, which I think is a really cool idea. And after Blackbeard dies, Barbossa ends up, taking the Queen Anne's Revenge for himself. And yeah, it's cool. I love the design of the ship. It's fantastic. Just the way it was designed. It's very evil. Got flames all around it. There's a flamethrower built into it. And unfortunately, it doesn't get a lot of action, which is kind of lame, but it's still a great ship. And it was actually, fun fact, it was built onto the Black Pearl, which was in the previous movie. It's kind of built onto that same base, which is kind of interesting. So, yeah. People complain that Will and Elizabeth aren't here. That's fair. Their story kind of ended in the third one. But there are two people here that are kind of replacements. So Philip Swift is a missionary aboard the ship, and he doesn't really do that much, to be honest. Like, it's cool to have a missionary in this film, but he doesn't do a lot. Like, he's just there. I guess he's there to keep Blackbeard in check, but I don't know. He's fine. He's not terrible. He does a decent job. Sam Claflin. He was also in The Hunger Games, Catching Fire, which is technically a better movie. It's whatever. It depends on what you think, but yeah, Astrid is great as Serena. She's along because they need her tear for one of the chalices, and it's fair. She does a good job, but she doesn't have a lot of development either. So she's weak in that regard, but she's a fine character. Their romance is all right. It does what it needs to. It's not terrible, but people complain. It's fine. It just depends on what you want. And yeah, this Jack is great. I forgot to talk about him. Jack is probably the funniest in this movie. There's a lot of great lines from him. He's on top of it. Johnny Depp is charismatic and as great as ever. The look of him is a little bit different this time. He has some different trinkets, and we also get to see Jack's dad. A little bit of a cameo. Keith Richards gets to show up briefly and talk about the fountain, and give Jack some info. Kind of cool to see him back. But yeah, he's the main character. We're following him. He's really fun, and he does a lot of great action still, and yeah, he's fun, very fun. Although technically he doesn't really do anything to advance the plot. He's just there because he's the main character, which is fine. And he's very fun to watch, so I don't really have anything to complain about there. I think probably the best actors in this movie is probably Jeffrey Rush. He's just amazing as Barbossa. It's still great. Just as fun and he's just entertaining. And then Ian McShane as Blackbeard. It's just a great villain. Although again, he's kind of weak, but he's still a great presence, and he has one of the best death scenes. I think he has the best death scene of all of the villains in the Pirates films. It's just so scary. Like, the way he dies, his flesh just gets, like, ripped apart from his bones, and there's blood, and it's really scary, especially for a Disney movie. It's very disturbing. But yeah, he did a great job. I kind of wish he was brought back, but I get it. They didn't want to bring him back, which is fair. I do find it a little bit confusing that Blackbeard has not been mentioned until now. It's a little bit weird, but it's fine. Gibbs is always a great time. So yeah, I just want to talk more about the actors. Penelope Cruz is very underrated here as Angelica. She has a decent amount of backstory, and her and Johnny have some good chemistry for sure. I just think it could have been definitely stronger. I think there could have been a little bit more there. But overall, I really like this movie. I love the action scenes. There's a lot of great lines. The actors are doing a great job, and the story is really interesting. It's very easy to follow. At least I thought it was. I mean, to some people it's not, but it just depends on what you want from this film. It works more as a spin-off than a sequel, although it technically is, and it was shot really well. This was shot with 3D cameras, which makes it have a very cool look to it, I think. And it's very gorgeous to look at, for sure. It's very well filmed, and the music is phenomenal, by the way. I think this has the best music of all the Pirates films, because it has some guitars, some strings, some violins. It's a very Spanish flair, which is really cool. We get to see a lot of great locations, too. So, I love this film. I can get the hate and the dislikes, but I love this world. It builds up the world, and it's a really cool story to me. And it works really well as a movie. It flies by, too. It seems long, but it runs pretty good. So, that's Pirates 4 on Stranger Tides. Let me know what you guys think. Do you prefer it over Dead Men Tell No Tales? That one. I've reviewed that one. That one is probably the weakest of the series. My second favorite. I still prefer Curse over this, but it has a lot of great elements to it. Some weak things, but overall, it's a pretty solid Pirates adventure to me. Let me know what you think. Do you like it? Do you not? Do you like this different direction? Do you think they should make another Pirates? Do you think they should stop? Let me know what you think down below. And what's your Pirates ranking? What do you think of the films? What's your favorite? And let me know what you think. Thank you so much for watching. Very much appreciate your support. Stay tuned for the next movie review, which will be very soon. Until then, take care, have a great day, and I'll see you later.